The White Rabbit is possibly the most successful thing to come out of Netflix's Devil May Cry cartoon. Yes, it's not really an anime. It's produced in America, distributed by an American company, and animated by the same Korean studio that animated Young Justice and X-Men 97. Far as I can tell, everything you can use to call this show an anime applies to the Super Mario Bros. Movie. Anyway, the thing I find most fascinating about this character is when you look at him from the outside of the series. At this point, it's no secret that a lot of the pre-existing fandom is not happy with the show. I mean, from what they say, I get it. The show's kind of turned the uniqueness of Dante's dad not being evil into a situation where there are many good demons, and what he did to save humanity may have damned them all to suffering. I'm sure I'd be annoyed too if I was a fan. But I'm not, so when I went into the series, I was more willing to accept the new lore. Demons are just differently evolved humans? Sure. Magic is just advanced technology. Why not? America can invade hell and build a demon prison camp? Okay, just because I can accept the show's doing its own thing doesn't mean I think it's all good. That's why I find the praise of the White Rabbit to be so interesting, because it's pretty much the result of the show being its own thing. Almost everything about his story is inconsistent with what I've heard of the game's lore, yet a lot of people don't hate him. I've seen people go from complaining that the show made demons sympathetic to praising the rabbit as the best part of the show. I find that fascinating from a writing standpoint because it's not that Rabbit's story is bad, it just doesn't fit into what most people know of Devil May Cry. Rabbit's just a really cool character. He's cunning, he's driven, he's terrifying, he's quotable if you're not annoyed by the politics of his quotes, and he's funny. When he's on screen, things get really fun. And his plans are actually really smart for the most part. The dumbest thing he does is not stabbing Dante while he's choking in Makai because of plot. Rabbit essentially forces DARKCOM to do all the hard work in capturing Dante for him, and then further builds on that to exact his revenge on them. The only flaw was that time Lady decided to be the main character, thereby delaying his plan and Dante being stronger than expected. Though, the thing about his master plan is that it's easy to misunderstand why he's doing what he does. A lot of people don't understand what his end goal is because they conflate his past goals with his current objective. Now, Rabbit is a sympathetic character, arguably more than any other character in the show, but he is the bad guy, even if you dislike DARKCOM more. Rabbit doesn't want to save the good demons anymore. He doesn't think it's possible because in his mind, the powerful on both sides of the wall will kill them. Can't say I blame him for coming to that conclusion. Once you combine that with his hatred for humanity, as he's fully abandoned his identity as a human and even his old name and embraced being of hell, his actual goal becomes much clearer. He doesn't think it's possible to save his kind, so he wants to spread the suffering from just them to also include humanity. He doesn't really talk about ending demons' pain, just bringing humans into it. If someone is tormenting 10 people and you can't save them, you can instead provide 10 more victims you don't care about and divide the tormentor's attention to give the first 10 more of a break. It's insane, but so is he. That's also why he's willing to subject the demons he cares so much about, allegedly, to such horrible experiments. It's all in what he said when he first became the White Rabbit. His entire life is based on Alice in Wonderland. For the boy abandoned in the foster system with no one caring for him, the portal to hell was a salvation, as he met people who did care about him and who he could come to care for in tow. Sure, life was hard, but he was happier. But when he tried to bring his family to the safety of Earth, it didn't really work out. The last time he called himself human was before humans killed his family. After he became the White Rabbit, the first thing he says is that they'll all go down the rabbit hole. The rabbit hole is the way to Makai. He went in there to be happy, but it's miserable for the people he found, and he couldn't bring his family out of it, so he's going to drag everyone in. The White Rabbit is a story we've seen time and time again, good intentions clouded by pain and hatred. Rabbit's noble goals of the past have simply been clouded by grief, rage, and resentment. Don't let your dislike for DARKCOM and the fact he lacks any real agency in the plot until episode 7 distract you from the fact that Dante is the main character and pretty much the only unambiguous good guy among all the important characters in the show, which is why it's such a problem he's so uninvolved.
I'd give the clothes off Benito's back if you really needed that.
You see, one of the most annoying things about the plot of this show is that it could have worked, but only if Dante was used properly. The main drivers of the plot are DARKCOM and Rabbit's gang, with Dante kind of just being a MacGuffin thereafter. And as the show exists, that leads to an issue of sidelining the main character from the story of what's going on. I think Dante spends like 70% of his screen time in this show in some variation of being kidnapped or held hostage. But because Dante is so disconnected, he's the only character who can come into the conflict without being a war criminal. Both sides of this battle are heavily biased and genocidal, but Dante is half human, half demon, and the perfect perspective that can give more objective observations, specifically on how everyone sucks. You know, as long as he's actually aware of the plot. It'd be like if Naruto just killed Pain while barely talking to him or even knowing what the Rain Village is. Or if the only person in Wakanda who knew anything about Killmonger was the guy he stabbed while fighting T'Challa. I'd give a third example, but I think I'll throw this one out to the crowd. Tell me in the comments what you'd compare this situation to. By the end of the season, what does Dante even know? Makai is hard to live in and Lady's boss is a dick. I'm pretty sure he's still completely unaware that there are good demons. If he was allowed to participate, Dante would be able to deconstruct both DARKCOM's self-righteous violence and Rabbit's insane spiral. Though I'm kind of doubtful that the show would let him say anything negative about Lady. Season 2 has to completely overhaul their dynamic, because if after all the betrayal Lady's still overly aggressive and Dante is still just taking it, I'm gonna immediately lose all hope for their dynamic and Lady as a character. I optimistically hope the DARKCOM dressing down is being saved for a later season, but really my biggest disappointment with Rabbit is how uninvolved Dante is. Because, as I pointed out in my more general review of the show, Lady is simply not working with the material he's giving her. When she realized exactly what he is, all she can do is comment on human cruelty, which honestly kind of makes me realize, yeah, the most cruelty Lady's had to deal with hasn't really come from demons. It's come from humans. I think that's part of the source of the underlying feeling of, what if Rabbit was the main character? Because the actual main characters are making him do all the work. This does raise a question though. Should the Rabbit have been a demon? If he's rewritten to be a demon who has been to the human world, would that be better? It might better explain how he survives this or figures out the science of Makai, but it'll lack the impact of him experiencing and abandoning humanity. Frankly, if I was to change him into being a demon, it would be so Lady couldn't simply brush off the terrible way they've shaped each other with some stupid comment about how only humans can be this sadistic or something. Keep in mind that 2 in-universe hours before she said that line, she thought demons were the worst, most evil thing she could encounter. Because, yeah, him being human does feed into this whole humans are the real evil trope that, at this point, has become cliche. Mundus better be an amazing villain. Speaking of demons, apparently the franchise is called Devil May Cry to signify that demons don't really cry for others, and Dante even changed the name of his agency to Devil Never Cry at the end of the first game. So I'm pretty surprised it just kinda glosses over when we do see devils cry without making much note of it. I guess when Dante's out and actually interacting with Makai in season 2, we'll get to see that reaction. Oh, and I was not that interested in Rabbit turning into a giant monster in episode 8 because it kinda loses a lot of what I did like about the character, and I don't think his design's that great. Rabbit is really interesting because even as someone who likes his character and has no real attachment to the franchise, even I find some of the tropes building him up to be less than stellar, which is a really charitable way for me to say I didn't like it. It almost feels like the show was built around making him the standout character, because as season 1 stands, he's the one who benefits the most from the writing. Which, if what I hear about Adi Shankar thinking of Rabbit like a self-insert is true, both makes sense and raises so many questions about how the guy sees himself. Does nothing to save him from the allegations of hating Christianity. Shout out to my patrons A and Skyman. Tell me your thoughts in the comments below. And while you're at it, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more content. Thank you and good day.